I'm Samuel. It all started when I found an old diary of my great-grandfather. Written in 1859, the yellowed pages were filled with words in his shaky handwriting. I saw something in the woods. A creature with wings and eyes like fire. Its scream pierced the soul of the night. After that day, he never set foot in the Pine Barrens again. His family thought he had lost his mind. But me, I was different. I wasn't a coward, at least I thought I was. The moment I read that diary, a spark lit inside me. I had to find the truth. Was the Jersey Devil real, or just a figment of a madman's imagination? I decided I would go to those woods. One fall evening, I parked my car at the entrance to the Pine Barrens. It was cold, the wind howling through the branches. I grabbed my flashlight, my camera, and a backpack from the trunk. I checked my phone. No signal. It's okay, I said to myself. I'm prepared enough for one night. But at that moment, the silence of the forest made me shiver for the first time. The pine trees were so thick and high that I couldn't even see the sky. When I took a step, the dry needles on the ground rustled, but the sound was quickly swallowed. It was as if the forest was sucking everything in. The light, the sound, even my courage. My first target was the ruins of the Leeds family home. According to legend, the Jersey Devil was born there in 1735. When Jane Leeds gave birth to her 13th child, she cursed, "Let this child be the devil," and the child, as soon as it was born, turned into a winged, horned creature and flew out the chimney. In the diary, my great-grandfather heard this story and traveled to the area. Now it was my turn. When I reached the ruins, the sun was about to set. I walked among the ruined stones and burnt wood. I rubbed my fingers against a beam and got a black stain on my hand as if something had scorched it. Then I noticed long, deep scratches on the wall like fingernail marks. But what animal could do such a thing? I took out my camera and started recording. This is the Leeds house. Look at these marks. It doesn't look natural, does it? As it got darker, an uneasiness began to grow inside me. I took the diary out of my pocket and read a line aloud. I saw those tracks, feet scorching the earth. I looked around. There were no tracks yet. But at that moment, I heard a sound in the distance, a faint but clear rustling. I pointed my flashlight, shining it through the trees, and there was nothing. "It's the wind," I muttered, but my voice was shaking. I put my backpack on my back and continued on my way. My second stop was where a coachman claimed to have seen the creature in 1820. Elias Wright said his horses went mad and his wagon almost overturned. When I arrived at the site, it was completely dark. In the light of my flashlight, I noticed an old pine tree. There were deep gashes in its trunk, as if something had torn it with its claws. I bent down and looked at the ground, and there, in the mud, I saw a 3-fingered print. My heart quickened. I turned to the camera. These marks are real. Do I belong to what Elias told me, or is it just a coincidence? I touched the black patches next to the tracks. The earth was hot, as if it had just been burned. Suddenly, a branch crackled. I looked up. I couldn't see anything, but the feeling came back. I was being watched. "Who's there?" I called out, but my voice was lost in the forest. I quickly turned my camera around, shining the light everywhere. The shadows seemed to move, but I couldn't be sure. My breathing became heavy. "Calm down, Samuel," I told myself. "Maybe it's a deer." But my inner voice whispered that it wasn't a deer. I decided to follow the tracks to my third stop. Last year, a group of campers said they saw something here and left their stuff and ran away. When I arrived at the campsite, it was a mess. A torn tent, an overturned chair, a shoe on the ground. And then I saw the tracks again, huge 3-toed footprints leading from the tent into the forest. I zoomed in on the tracks. "Look at this, it looks fresh. Whatever he did, there was something here." But at that moment, a smell hit my nose, like sulfur, pungent and disgusting. I felt nauseous. Night had fallen. I decided to sit down near the campsite and rest. I built a fire, but even the flames couldn't chase away the darkness. I put my flashlight next to me and turned on the camera. It's approaching midnight. The forest is very quiet, but it's like something is watching me. My words hung in the air. Then I heard a scream. It sounded like a human voice, but much more savage, much more terrible. I grabbed the camera and jumped up. "Did you hear that?" I whispered. I shone the light into the forest, and for a moment, I saw two red dots. Were they eyes? But they disappeared. Fear gripped me, but my curiosity was stronger. "I have to go and look," I said to the camera. "If there is a Jersey Devil, I will find him." I took a step, but with each step, my feet felt heavier. The rustling started, faint at first, then closer. I heard a flapping of wings, as if a huge bird had taken off. I turned the camera left and right. What is that? Where is it coming from? The light was flickering, my hands were shaking, and then I saw a shadow. A silhouette, not human, floating among the trees. I paused. "Turn back, Samuel," I thought, but my feet carried me forward. I followed the shadow until I came to a clearing. The moonlight illuminated it, and there, right in front of me, I saw it. A creature standing on two legs, its wings folded on its back. Its head was like a horse, but with horns and fangs, like something out of a nightmare. Its eyes were red, glowing in the dark. I pointed the camera at it. My God, is this real? The creature looked at me. I forgot to breathe. It took a step, its claws scraped the earth. The smell of sulfur became unbearable, and then it screamed a sound that pierced my ears, made me dizzy. I dropped the camera but caught it at the last moment. I stepped back, but it kept coming closer. He spread his wings, so big they blocked out the moonlight. "What do you want from me?" I shouted, but my voice was shaky and weak. Just then, there was a sound in the distance. Maybe a car horn, maybe something else. The creature turned its head, paused for a moment, and then, flapping its wings, it took off. As it disappeared into the darkness, the wind hit me in the face. My knees gave way. I sank to the ground. I pressed the camera to my chest. "He's gone." But he was real. I saw him. I stood up, trembling with fear. I had to go back. I started to run. Branches scratched my face. My feet stumbled. I could still hear the sound of wings, but I didn't look back. I couldn't. When I reached the campsite, I grabbed my bag and took one last sprint to the car. I don't know how I got out of the forest. I found myself on the highway, panting, my hands clamped on the steering wheel. When I got home, I locked the door and put the camera on the table. I sat there for hours, thinking about those eyes. Finally, I got up the courage and watched the recording. The images were shaky, but when the moment came, I stopped it. On the screen, blurry but clear, was the creature. Wings spread, eyes glowing. "It's the Jersey Devil," I whispered, now sitting in my safe room, but still carrying that feeling. Pine Barrens changed me. That creature is still out there, waiting for its next prey. And you know what? When I opened the last page of the diary, I saw the last sentence my great-grandfather wrote. He saw me. And one day he will return. Maybe it was my turn. Share your thoughts in the comments. And if you're ever in New Jersey, don't forget to set your course before the sun sets in the Pine Barrens, because this forest is still full of secrets